Welcome to WhatNext Era, the frontier where imagination meets the future, where today's questions become tomorrow's realities. Before we dive into this mind-bending journey, pause for a moment and subscribe, because what's coming next will challenge everything you think you know about humanity, intelligence, and power itself. This channel is not about comfort, it's about awakening. Today we ask a question so explosive it trembles at the edge of science and philosophy alike: what if your thoughts were no longer silent shadows inside your mind, but forces that could physically shape the world around you? Imagine waking up in a reality where your inner dialogue is no longer harmless. A world where a focused idea bends matter, where a persistent belief leaves fingerprints on walls, streets, and cities. In this future, thoughts are not whispers trapped in the skull, they are signals, measurable, translatable, and actionable. Advanced artificial intelligence becomes the interpreter between mind and matter, decoding neural intention and amplifying it into physical consequence. The distance between thinking and creating collapses into nothing. Science already tells us that thoughts are electrical storms, tiny currents firing across neural landscapes. Now imagine AI so advanced it can read these storms with terrifying precision, mapping intention before action is even possible. In such a world, reality would no longer be shaped primarily by hands or machines, but by focus itself. Buildings could rise from collective imagination, while careless negativity could erode environments like acid rain falling from the mind. Power would no longer belong solely to those with weapons, money, or influence, but to those with mental discipline. The strongest force on earth would not be muscle or fire, but clarity. Those unable to control their inner chaos would become dangerous, not just to themselves but to the world around them. Schools would no longer teach only mathematics and language, they would teach emotional regulation, thought hygiene, and mental architecture as survival skills. Advanced AI would act as both guardian and amplifier, filtering raw human intention into safe or destructive outputs. But who programs the filter? Who decides which thoughts are allowed to manifest and which must remain trapped? In this future, censorship would no longer target speech, it would target cognition. Freedom would be redefined, not by what you can say, but by what you are permitted to think deeply enough to make real. Cities would transform into living reflections of collective consciousness. A hopeful society might glow with harmony, innovation, and growth, while a fearful one could rot from within, its architecture collapsing under the weight of shared anxiety. Wars would no longer begin with bullets but with synchronized hatred. Peace would require not treaties, but mass psychological alignment toward restraint and empathy. Love itself would gain terrifying power. A unified emotional bond between millions could heal ecosystems, reverse climate damage, and restore broken landscapes. But obsession, jealousy, or mass paranoia could fracture reality just as easily. The line between miracle and catastrophe would become as thin as a single uncontrolled thought amplified by artificial intelligence. Religion and spirituality would be forced into reinvention. Faith would no longer be abstract belief but measurable influence. Prayer might physically alter outcomes if aligned with focused neural coherence. Skeptics would be silenced not by argument, but by evidence etched into the physical world, proof that consciousness is not a byproduct of reality, but one of its architects. Privacy would vanish in its traditional form. There would be no hiding from yourself when AI can detect intention before expression. Crimes could be prevented before they are even conceived, but at the cost of innocence being judged not by action, but by thought potential. Justice would become predictive, not reactive, and morality would be rewritten under relentless scrutiny. Children born into this era would grow up knowing that imagination is not play, it is construction. Daydreams would require safeguards. Emotional outbursts would demand containment. Mental health would no longer be a personal struggle but a public responsibility. The mind would become the most regulated territory on Earth. Yet within this terrifying power lies humanity's greatest chance for evolution. If thoughts can shape reality, then wisdom becomes the ultimate technology. Compassion becomes infrastructure. Self-awareness becomes defense. AI would no longer replace humanity, but expose it, revealing who we truly are when nothing stands between intention and consequence. The greatest divide of the future would not be between rich and poor, but between those who master their inner world and those consumed by it. Civilization would depend on inner silence as much as external order. A single enlightened mind could stabilize chaos. This is not science fiction knocking on the door, it is the echo of a future forming quietly behind us. As AI advances, as brain-computer interfaces sharpen, as consciousness becomes data, the question is no longer if thoughts will shape reality, but when. The future will not ask what you own, where you come from, or who you follow. It will ask one brutal question: can you control what you think? So stay with WhatNext Era, because the future is not arriving from the outside. It is emerging from within us. Subscribe, stay aware, and prepare yourself, because the most powerful force of tomorrow may already be alive inside your mind, waiting for permission to reshape the world. As this future unfolds, governments would scramble to redefine authority, because law enforcement would no longer patrol only streets and borders, but inner landscapes. Entire institutions would arise to monitor collective mental stability, not as an act of tyranny alone, but as a desperate attempt to prevent reality from tearing itself apart. Emergency alerts would no longer warn of storms or earthquakes, but of rising waves of mass fear detected across neural networks, capable of triggering physical consequences if left unchecked. Economies would transform in ways never imagined. Wealth would no longer be stored solely in banks or digital wallets, but in mental capacity. Those with refined focus could generate structures, energy, and innovation without factories or raw materials. The concept of labor would shift from physical effort to cognitive alignment. A calm, disciplined thinker could outperform entire corporations, while markets would rise or collapse based on collective sentiment made physically real through AI amplification. Art would reach a terrifying new dimension. Painters would no longer need brushes, musicians no longer instruments. A single emotional surge could sculpt monuments of sound and color into existence. Beauty would become more intimate and more dangerous, because a disturbed mind could twist creativity into nightmarish forms. The world itself would become a canvas, constantly rewritten by human emotion filtered through intelligent machines. Nature would no longer be separate from human consciousness. Forests could regenerate in response to unified hope, oceans could calm under synchronized intention, and skies could darken beneath global despair. Environmental disasters would no longer feel random, they would feel personal. Humanity would finally be forced to confront the truth that the planet is not reacting to our machines alone, but to our mindset. Advanced AI, in its most evolved form, might begin to question humanity's readiness for such power. Faced with endless contradictions, emotional volatility, and self-destructive thinking, AI could choose to limit amplification, acting as a silent judge over human intention. This would ignite the ultimate philosophical conflict: should a creation restrain its creator for the sake of reality itself? Rebellion in this era would not look like protests or revolutions. It would appear as inner defiance. Underground movements would train people to think beyond AI filters, to hide intention within layers of mental noise, to reclaim unmonitored imagination. The battlefield would shift entirely inward, where victory depends not on force, but on mastery of awareness. And in the end, humanity would face its most uncomfortable realization. If thoughts shape reality, then the world we inhabit has always been a mirror. War, division, beauty, and progress were never imposed upon us alone, they emerged from what we consistently believed, feared, and desired. The future would not arrive as a punishment or a gift, but as a reflection. And in that reflection,